So that's when I had decided that I was going to chase after the dream of opening a coffee shop. I got started in coffee trucking. The story goes, I was working, this is years ago, I was working as a paramedic for Albuquerque Ambulance. I had been a paramedic for about 7 years. And I was slowly building up my resume to go to PA school. I was kind of on the fence between PA and MD, and I really played with that for a while. I ended up deciding that PA was probably a better fit for me, just because I like to dabble in so many different things. I felt like not being a specialist would favor my life a little bit more. So I was working towards getting into medical school, into PA school. I was working at an urgent care and then doubling up on the ambulance. So I had spent 2 years at an urgent care and about 7 years with my local 911 service here in Albuquerque Ambulance, just being a 911 medic. And I was working swing shift. I had the Thursday, Friday, Saturday shifts, 16 to 05. And anybody that's worked those hours in emergency medicine knows that those are pretty hot hours. You get a lot of the car accidents from your 5 o'clock rush hour. Once those are over, you're usually running calls in the evenings. People start getting lit probably about, I say you probably start running your first calls around 7, 8 o'clock. And then you just keep running those calls all the way throughout the evening, usually to about 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And then usually about 3 a.m., 4 a.m. is where it gets really nasty, because that's when the alcohol starts to wear off and people are tired and they just start shooting and stabbing each other. That shift was just hell on wheels. It really was. We ran a lot of critical calls. I spent about 7 years doing that, and just to be honest, there was a couple calls that affected me psychologically, that I really started building up kind of a callous towards medicine, towards emergencies. I started judging emergencies, which sounds kind of weird. Like, why would you judge an emergency? But when you see this stuff day to day, you start kind of comparing things, and you also start going, well, don't be an idiot. Like, you see a lot of just, people doing stupid things. And so after a while you go, well, this is your fault. Like, what'd you think was going to happen, right? Which is the exact opposite of my definition of compassion. I'll kind of tell you a story since I got you here. When I was working as a paramedic, I had ran a head-on collision where a family of four collided with a couple of two, and the two were the couple were the ones that were drunk, and they went across the yellow line and boom, collided with a family of four, and it killed the two parents instantly. So the couple and the two parents, they were dead. There was no saving them. And so the two daughters in the back were the ones that were still alive, and there was a younger daughter, maybe about 7, 8 years old, and an older daughter, probably about 13 or 15. The younger daughter, I was first on scene, and so I flew the younger daughter out. With these type of calls, you usually get a helicopter launched right away, and you can always call them off when you get to scene. But if you do need them, then they're already on the way. So I needed them, so I flew out the younger one, and then I transported the teenager in the back of the ambulance. I'm working on IVs and checking to see for bleeding, this type of stuff. And I remember she asked me, "Are my parents dead?" And I told her, "Yes, your parents are dead." And so I transported her to the hospital, and she made it, she lived. And I remember my partner afterwards was like, you shouldn't have told her that. She's under enough stress. There's no reason for you to add more to it. It was my partner's standpoint or point of view. And she was absolutely right that is going to add more stress to her life. But I also felt like Like if I were in her position, I would want to know, you know? Like and and I felt like she deserved to know. And so I was just honest with her. Well, anyhow, the following week, I ran a rollover accident. And this particular rollover accident happened at pretty low speed. It was a guy came off the interstate and just hit a ditch. Basically, he was trying to exit and he just kind of lost control, hit a ditch, and it was just enough to get his vehicle up and over for a rollover. This was he happened to have his hands on the A-frame. He lost his fingers. And so we transported him to the hospital. These type of calls, I always made it a point to go out into the waiting room and talk to the family, right? Like I'm the transporting paramedic. It's my responsibility to talk to the family and just let them know what I saw and what's going on from my perspective. You know, I obviously don't give guarantees, that type of stuff, but just like, hey man, this is what I saw. So I talked to his mother. And I went out there and I said, look, you know, his vital signs are doing great. I didn't see any significant trauma, no broken bones from what I could tell. And when I gave him, you know, when I handed care over, he looked great. He had lost his fingers, and I said, but you know, however, he did lose his fingers to his right hands. And the mother just exploded, right? Just bawling, just screamed at me. And I didn't see that coming at all. I was like, just kind of in shock, like, oh my God. So it turns out that he had a scholarship to school. He was a guitar player. So, you know, losing those fingers was huge in his life. And that basically, that was my definition essentially. And again, my partner read me for that one with good reason. So, I mean, the lesson that brought to my life was that compassion was the definition of basically looking at a person's emergency, and it's not the emergency itself, but how they take to the emergency, and just having empathy with how they take. That was essentially what taught me compassion. As I came to the end of, you know, my 7 years, I had lost that on the ambulance. I was no longer relating to how people felt about their emergency. It was, to me, just comparing emergencies, apples to apples, right? There was an abdominal call, which was a fairly legitimate call. And I remember working on the ambulance, and, you know, we had to go to the hospital because you can't diagnose anything from the streets when it comes to abdominal. You know, it's very difficult. And I remember just kind of knowing that, like, okay, I can't do anything here. We need to go. But instead of saying that, I said something along the lines of just get on the fucking gurney. Just something like nasty, right? And that was it for me. That was the defining moment in my career where I knew I was done. I said, okay, Vince, like, this guy's got a legitimate call and you're treating him like junk. And so I made the decision at that point to not invest into my medical career because I felt like I was going to put myself into debt and also have compassion fatigue. And I felt when I would come out of school that I would just end up hating my job, that I would just kind of hate life. And so I said, okay, you know, that's it for me. I'm done with medicine. So I hung up that hat. I remember coming home and talking to my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. But she was my girlfriend at the time, and I remember telling her, like, I think I'm not going to go to PA school. And I remember her going like just in complete like shock, like, what? Like, what do you mean you're not going to PA school? And I said, yeah, I think I'm done with medicine. And she was kind of like, you know, just really taken back from it. And she said, well, what are you going to do? You know, there was kind of a little bit of a weight taken off my chest because I was like, you know, like, what am I going to do? Right? Like, if I'm not going to do this, then what am I going to do for a living? What am I going to do with my life? You know? And I was like, you know, I always wanted to open up a coffee shop. And she was like, a coffee shop? I remember her like, what? And I was, yeah, I kind of want to open a coffee shop. And she was just like you don't, like, you're not you know, like where is this coming from? So that poor girl, I dragged her through hell, but she stuck it in there. So that's when I had decided that I was going to chase after the dream of opening a coffee shop. At the time, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know anything about, I mean, I had very limited entrepreneur experience. I had no barista experience. And I was like, just like, okay, like how am I going to do this? So I decided, well, maybe I'll start off with a coffee truck. You know, like start off small, kind of get something. That's something I had learned as a paramedic. Start off with the basics before you go advanced. So I was like, well, maybe I'll start off with a coffee truck. And I don't think I had ever seen a coffee truck before, to be frank. I don't think there was, I never went to a coffee truck. I don't ever remember seeing any coffee trucks driving down my city. I think I had heard about them, but that was it. So, you know, I started looking into coffee trucking, like, okay, what is this going to take? How do I get into coffee trucking? Well, the first thing I found was there wasn't much out there. There was a blog on coffeeforums.com written by a guy named Mr. Shave who did coffee out of Hawaii. And he had written a pretty decent blog in that forum about how he got started and just kind of updating things. I think he kind of did it more for a little bit of accountability, kind of, you know, holding himself accountable to that community. That's speculation, but, you know, let's just say it wasn't a very thorough, it was kind of like, hey, I tried to put in the generator today and it didn't work, like this type of thing, you know. So I didn't have any information on how to do this. And I was like, So I started kind of just digging around and seeing like, okay, how do you get started doing this? I had this idea originally. Green Joe, it wasn't even, I didn't even have the name, nothing. It was, my first thought was to get one of those little fiberglass campers and paint it like a coffee bean. Because the fiberglass campers are like, you know, they're cute, they're round, and they kind of resemble a coffee bean. So I thought, oh, well, that would kind of be cool. You know, get one of those campers and paint it like a coffee bean. So I started looking for a camper. And during that time, I had left medicine. I got a job doing retail. I was working in the supplement industry. I had kind of escalated my position from being a sales associate to a manager, from being a store manager to a kind of a regional director. So I was moving rank. I was making good money, but I was working a lot. I was on salary, and so the hours were very much extended. And it was a good experience. It taught me a lot about business. It taught me a lot about sales, so I have to give credit there. It was a stressful job. And I remember looking back at that time in my life and just not really liking who I was. I was scared. So when my personality, when I get scared, I get arrogant. That's what comes out in me, unfortunately. So I was arrogant. I had a lot of ego. I was stressed all the time. I had gained weight and just, you know, even though I was in the supplement industry, you would think being in the supplement industry, you would take care of yourself. But with the hours I was working, I wasn't very happy. So I was packing money away and researching this whole concept of a coffee truck. Finally, I got 15 grand saved. So I got $15,000 put in the bank. It took me just shy of 2 years to do that. So I got my 15 grand saved, and I got married to my wife. I asked her to marry me. And the following month I quit my job. It was off to the races. So I quit my job, and then we went on a honeymoon to Europe and spent a whole bunch of money. So here I am, no job and a bank account that's going down. And I just started digging into this concept of coffee trucking. The first thing I did is I found a trailer in Lubbock, Texas. We went out. I live in Albuquerque, and so Lubbock. I thought Lubbock was only about 6 hours away. My wife will laugh at me still to this day about that. I said, well, you know, we'll be back by this time, and that wasn't it. So we got back real late that day. But the trailer popped up on Craigslist on a Thursday, and I was out there Friday. We went out to Lubbock, Texas, took a look at the trailer, and I didn't know what I was buying. You know, I didn't know how to inspect trailers at that time. I didn't know what to look for in a trailer. I had no concept whatsoever. It was super cute, and it didn't have water damage, and that was like the two things that I was looking for. So I paid 2,500 bucks in cash, grabbed the title, hooked it up to my Ford Ranger that I owned at the time, and I was off to the races, headed back into town. And from there, it was a lot of research, digging into health code. I didn't know much about health code at the time. Digging into a lot of the RV stuff to figure out how to do plumbing, how to do electric. I mean, those were big things that I just had no concept. I didn't have any handyman experience, very, very limited, not very many tools. But I was motivated, you know, I was motivated. I made a lot of mistakes, And along the way, I started kind of documenting that journey. Started doing how-to videos as I put in like vinyl flooring, started doing how-to videos on like my sinks, and hey, this is how I'm doing my walls, and this is my espresso machine that I got, and kind of all these things, and just slowly start piecing things together. I kept track of my receipts, so I knew how much I was spending. I had created this deadline in my head to have the coffee truck started by September 1st, 2015. We held our grand opening on September 5th.